What's going on, guys? We're finally back with another roundup of PS4 and PS5 jailbreak news updates. After almost a month since my last update here, things have definitely slowed down over the past month. However, things are starting to pick up now once again. So we do actually have a lot of little updates and some big updates that have happened recently that we're going to dive into here in this video. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. So starting with the fact that there may be a new bug coming out. This coming to us from Zeko. He says there's a bug coming out, most likely for PS5. Unsure if the PS4 is affected, but doubt it. And he's also confirming that it's coming from TheFlow, from, I believe, the HackerOne bug bounty program. So if we take a look at the HackerOne bug bounty program, if we scroll down, we do have this older $10,000 bounty from TheFlow himself right here. Now, as I always say, it's usually 3 to 6 months before a report gets disclosed, and this was resolved 5 months ago, so he could be referring to this finally being disclosed, as it is 5 months old, so it's getting to that point where it's likely to get disclosed fairly soon. But I do remember when this bug was first reported that Zeko and I believe a few other developers in the scene who claim to have more knowledge on this were saying that this is not a new kernel exploit, it's some kind of lesser exploit, but they don't know the full extent of it. So that remains to be seen what this actually turns out to be, but it will be good if it gets disclosed so that we can finally, figure out what it is and see how useful it ends up being. Also, there's this other $10,000 bounty from 4 months ago from Slidey Bat, but again, I'm not particularly excited about any reports that don't come from TheFlow because these other security researchers tend not to request disclosure by the looks of things, since it's usually TheFlow's the only one whose reports actually get disclosed, particularly for high severity reports. Now, there have also been some claims made about a new report that TheFlow may or may not have submitted through the HackerOne bug bounty program. Now, the basis for this is that apparently the bounties paid out in the last 90 days increased by a significant amount, although I haven't been able to verify this because I haven't been actively monitoring it from before and after, so not sure on that one. And also, TheFlow's account has received a 1-month streak, which apparently you get when submitting valid reports for that month. Although I've checked, pretty much everybody else's account also has at least a 1-month streak as well, so who knows whether or not to take any credence to that. But anyway, we'll know soon enough, because usually it doesn't take very long after a report is closed for it to actually appear in the Hacktivity section. So if there is a new report, it should show up any time now, and even if there is one, it probably won't be disclosed for another 3 to 6 months anyway. Not only that, but we also got a new system software release for the PS5, bringing the system software version up to 10.60. There's no mention in the update notes to say that there's been any kind of fixes to the security, which is normally what you would see when they fix a vulnerability, although it is possible that PlayStation might no longer be reporting that in the update notes now, especially since it's an easy way for us to tell when a new exploit has been discovered and patched. Anyway, we'll have to wait and see how that develops. So moving on from that, we also got the release of a public beta test for etaHEN version 2.0B by Lightning Mods. Now, this version was designed to test new toolbox improvements to improve the stability and a new cheat system to be tested, which allows you to use the GoldHEN cheats on the PS5, as well as other cheats for PS5 games in either MC4, JSON, or etaHEN format. So just like the GoldHEN cheats on the PS4, once you're running a game, you can go over to the toolbox and you can see a new cheats work in progress option, which then gives you all of the cheats that are available for that title, as well as game version that you're running. If there's a cheat available, it will give you all of the cheats and you can go ahead and enable and disable them from this menu, and then just hop back into the game to see the cheats applied. So that is what's being tested at the moment. Now, by the time this video goes out, the beta will most likely already be either over or just about to be over. So it was only going to be running for a limited time, and then it will be shut down. And then, of course, improvements will be made, and then we'll get a new release that will have a finalized version of these changes implemented with all of the fixes applied, including the ability to download the latest cheats automatically from etaHEN without having to copy them manually like you have to do with the beta version. So it's more of a sneak peek into the upcoming features of etaHEN that you could get access to early. I did do a whole video covering it when it came out, so I'll leave that down in the video description. So moving on, we also have a new implementation of the Blu-ray drive exploit from John Tornblom. Says here, a BDJ homebrew enabler for PS5s running firmwares 3.0 to 4.51. Now, the reason why it's 3.0 to 4.51 is it is in fact using the older IPv6 kernel exploit, not the new UMTX kernel exploit that works from 1.00 all the way up to 7.61. So this is just an evolution on the BDJ exploit that we've had with this kernel exploit for some time. Now, there was some confusion with this when it first released because it was incorrectly labeled as BDJ-UMTXHEN, as if it was using the newer UMTX kernel exploit that works from 1.00 all the way up to 7.61, where we don't really have a properly stable implementation of that at the moment, apart from Hammer 83's version, which doesn't have, payloads built in and whatnot, which made it seem like it was maybe bigger than it actually was. But no, it's always used the older IPv6 kernel exploit, as evidenced by the 3.0 to 4.51 being supported. It was just incorrectly labeled, and that has now been fixed to the proper label of IPv6 to show that it is using the older IPv6 kernel exploit. So essentially, to use this, all you got to do is download the ISO file from the releases section. So you just head to the releases, download the ISO, burn it to a Blu-ray disc using image burn by just dragging and dropping the ISO into image burn and clicking the button to write the image file to the disc once you have the Blu-ray inserted. And then you can just take it out once it's done, put it in your PS5 and launch it. And once you do that, it will go ahead and load up the menu if it does not panic. And then once you get into the menu, by the time it actually regains an HDMI signal, it's already running the persistent ELF loader in the background, which is fantastic. And then you can just select whatever payloads you want to load. The top menu loads payloads from the repo on the internet, which means if these payloads get updated, you won't have to burn a new Blu-ray disc to get the updated payloads. It will just download the latest ones online and execute them, which is handy. And then for offline use, you also have the payloads that are already written to the disk that you can load if you're not connected to the internet. So that is a handy feature there. And of course, it has all of Jon Tornblom's main payloads, his web server payload, FTP payload, telnet server and more. Is all included here. Now, it doesn't include other payloads like, PS5 debug, etaHEN, PS5K stuff. You could add those payloads in manually once the repo gets updated with the proper build instructions. We could add our own payloads to this list, but also you can just inject the payloads from a payload injector from another device on the network as well, just by sending them over Netcat on port 9021. So I can just send etaHEN here and it will load automatically using the ELF loader that's running in the background. You don't actually have to be on the Blu-ray player once you have the ELF loader loaded because it runs in the background. So the issue right now with this obviously is that it's just more convenient to use the web browser method to load the exploit. It's just quicker to access and you don't have to burn a Blu-ray disc or have that inserted in your console to use. But it's nice that alternative methods exist and that they're still being worked on and continuously improved. And perhaps this could be a jumping off point for Jon Tornblom to try and port this over to use the UMTX kernel exploit in the future, which would certainly be useful for firmwares that don't have access to the web browser right now, like 6.0 up to 7.61, of course. So moving on from that, it appears that Linux might be in the works for PS5. So Zeko has teased this on Twitter. He said Slayers Govey is working on PS5 Linux, soon TM. And what surprised me more is the fact that he suggested that it should work for everything that Kstuff allows. In other words, that you should be able to load Linux once this comes out on firmwares that support Kstuff, not just firmwares that have a hypervisor exploit, which is very surprising to me because I was under the assumption that it required a hypervisor exploit to be able to load Linux, which is why we haven't seen a port of Linux up until now, until we've actually got a hypervisor exploit, which only came out in the past few months. So I would have thought it would only be 1.00 up to 2.70 that have the biprovisor exploit that would be able to load Linux. But Zeko is suggesting that maybe Kstuff users on firmwares up to 4.51 right now and potentially 5.50 once it gets ported to those firmwares might be able to load Linux as well through PS5 Kstuff. I'm still skeptical about that, but we'll have to wait and see if that actually happens. But I'm definitely excited for PS5 Linux. I really hope that, they're able to do this because PS4 Linux is one of the most impressive things to me that you can do with a jailbroken PS4. I know there's a lot of people out there who are just not interested in running Linux on your console, which is fair enough, but for me it's exciting. I think PS4 Linux had a lot of potential, but the PS4 was just a little bit too underpowered to really take full advantage of it. Whereas the PS5 really is in a good position to take full advantage of it if we can eventually get it to the same level as the PS4 in terms of driver support, which will take a while to obviously get to that point once we can run Linux. That's still a long road ahead, I think, until we get to that level of support, but definitely exciting times to be able to run Linux on PS5, especially when you consider how much more powerful it will be than PS4. I'm here for it, I'm excited for it, I can't wait until Linux is available on the PS5. Now, we've also had a fix for a game dump, Devil May Cry 5, so this was released on Christmas, and unfortunately it was incomplete. It would only allow you to play, I believe, the first 2 missions, and then there was some issue that wouldn't allow you to go beyond that. So it looks like the game dump for Devil May Cry 5 has finally been fixed, so you should theoretically be able to play through the whole game now, which is a welcome change. And then there's also a new serial guide that has been posted on the PS5 dev wiki, which can give you some different serial numbers and that correspond to various firmware versions. So if you're looking to get a PS5 on a specific firmware, you can use this serial guide to help you. It is incomplete at the moment. Obviously, it's been added to as time goes on, but this could be a useful resource if you're looking to try and get a console on a specific firmware. It also looks like we might be getting GoldHEN support for 9.03 firmwares fairly soon. The last firmware that's not supported with the pp-pwn exploit with GoldHEN is 9.03, and Chameleon here says that he is looking for testers on 9.03, willing to test GoldHEN, so it looks like we might be getting close here to a release of a version for that firmware, which will finally bring all of the PS4s that use the pp-pwn exploit to parity in terms of GoldHEN support. And surprisingly, we finally have something new for 6.0 to 7.61 firmwares in the form of a root access FTP server. Now, this isn't currently publicly released yet, although it was put out publicly on the R&D Discord, but it's not really been posted anywhere yet, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend running this until there is a full release, because there could be some issues with it at the moment. But I have tested it, and it does in fact work on firmwares up to 7.61. I tested personally on that firmware, and it was working fine. So the way it works is you use the BDJ exploit, of course, from Hammer 83 to run the exploit from a Blu-ray disc. And then once it loads up, you can then send the umtx snapshot.jar file to execute the kernel exploit on those firmwares. And if that runs successfully and it says it's waiting for follow-up payloads on port 9025, you then send the FTP root access snapshot to the console. And then from there, it should enable the FTP server with root access. So the username is PS5 root and the password is root. And in order to actually connect properly, you do have to configure your FTP client. In my case, I'm using FileZilla, where all I have to do here is go to the site manager, create a new site, enter the PS5's IP address in the host box. Port number is 9225, I believe in this case. And then you're going to want to change the authentication type to the insecure plain FTP, which is what's required for this. And then ask for password and use PS5 root as the username. Click OK, and then when you go to connect to the server from the site manager, it will prompt you for the password. The password is just root, and that will get you in. And as you can see, we do have access. Now, I've noticed that you don't have access to the user folder, at least in this early version. There's no access to the user folder, but most of the other directories in the hard drive are accessible. This is not just your typical sandboxed FTP like we've seen in the past. This is proper root access FTP, although with some directories missing at the moment. But still a little bit of progress there for 6.0 to 7.61 as well. So yeah, anyway, that's it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed this video or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And once again, I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video.